Hey everyone, I am here with Tim Canova running in Florida's 23rd Congressional District against the infamous Debbie Wassermann Schultz, one of the most corrupt people in Congress currently. I think that is not a controversial thing to say right now. Tim, welcome to the program.
Mike, it's great to be with you.
Thanks. I'm really excited to have you. So we had some really big news about your campaign, and I was so excited about this. So you've decided to run as an independent. Explain us your reasoning here.
Sure. It was a long time coming. I registered Democrat when I first was able to vote at the age of 18. And I worked on Capitol Hill for a couple of years for a Democrat, the late U.S. Senator Paul Tsongas. I've worked on a number of campaigns and helped Democrats over the years. And it was, the party that I identified with. I guess you could say the great New Deal traditions of the party of Roosevelt and Kennedy. And I became disappointed in the party some years ago. The corporate drift of the party was quite disturbing. I'm a law professor, and I've been writing out against the deregulation of financial markets, among other things. And the Democrats seem to lead the way with this neoliberal type of agenda. And actually, it was in 2012, I registered independent, non-party affiliation. I voted for Barack Obama's reelection, but I thought, my dissatisfaction with the party had reached a point where I did register independent. And I was independent for a couple of years and then changed back to Democrat and, as you know, challenged the chair of the Democratic National Committee. So I was doing my part, I thought, to try to reform the party from within. And we announced our intention to run again after the last primary against Wassermann Schultz, and was planning on running as a Democrat. The problem was nothing had really changed in the party, not here in Broward County or the state level or probably national either. This is a party that really favors the incumbents in primaries, and I'm in a closed primary state. And they favor the incumbents in so many ways. They shield them from debates. They pump them up with corporate donations. And then, as if that's not bad enough, they do their damnedest to keep challengers like me off of podiums, away from microphones, unable to even speak at public forums. So that's a brutal combination for a closed primary. And we were very excited about the race we ran last time. Our internal field numbers showed us just rocking it right to the end, and we came out of nowhere. Nobody had even heard of me a few months before the primary. However, things took an even worse turn, which is when we tried to verify the vote. We tried to inspect the ballots from my 2016 primary, and we put in a public records request in November of 2016. The supervisor of elections of Broward County stonewalled us for many months. And I was finally forced to, if I really wanted to see these ballots and verify the vote, I was forced to file a lawsuit last summer. While the lawsuit was pending, the supervisor of elections of Broward County destroyed all of our paper ballots. And there's been no adequate explanation whatsoever. Oops, we made a mistake. It just doesn't carry, really, it just doesn't make much sense. They even signed a destruction order claiming the ballots were not the subject of any pending litigation when they were. So I contacted the Secretary of State of Florida. I sent a letter, calling for an investigation. And I called on Democratic leaders in Broward County and Miami-Dade and statewide to join me in this call for an investigation. And the silence was deafening. Nobody would speak up and even ask for, some investigation of what happened in a Democratic primary and a highly contested one. And that was pretty much the last straw. At the same time that the Democratic Party was really pushing us out, is the way I described it. They left us. We didn't leave the Democratic Party. At the same time, that was really reaching a peak. This young generation was standing up probably more visibly or vocally than we'd seen in the past. These are high school kids coming of age in the aftermath of the Parkland shootings. And it really kind of highlights what's happening here, this generational shift. Millennials and younger something like 70% of them are now non-party affiliation. They're independents. They've rejected both the Democratic and Republican parties. And I think they've seen these parties for the kind of corrupt institutions they've become. The Democratic Party has really become a conduit for funneling corporate lobbyist donations, corporate money, to a political consulting class and media buys. And if they're going to remain as this conduit for corporate money, their primary mission has been to stifle dissent within the party and to prevent progressives like me from challenging entrenched incumbents. Their secondary objective is to defeat Republicans in general elections, but it's only secondary. Their main primary objective is to remain a corporate party. And we're not a corporate campaign. We were not last time. We'll never be. I didn't take a penny from any corporate political action committees or super PACs. I remember reading in the Huffington Post that our campaign last time around broke all records for the highest percentage of small donations online for any federal campaign in history. And I'm proud of that. I've never done the call time. I've never begged for dollars from business people. And it's all small donations online. People are going to timcanova.com. And I will say that since we made this announcement, since I made the announcement that we're going to run as an independent, we've seen a pretty good upsurge of small donations online. And that's what we need if we're going to win this race. And I think if we do, it's really kind of a game changer. The political revolution was running through South Florida 2 years ago when I was challenging the head of the DNC. I think now it's once again running through South Florida, running as an independent.
Yeah, progressives aren't going anywhere. And I just want to follow up on something that you said about auditing the vote, especially because there was evidence of fraud being committed. Vote auditing is not something that is controversial. Anyone can do it. I can audit the election results in my county. Anyone can do this. So the fact that they went to such great lengths to block you from just doing a simple tally of the votes, I think that's really telling of the corruption that's going on there. And certainly the aggregate, the National Democratic Party, they're very corrupt, but state parties in particular, some of them are very corrupt. At the top of my head, I'm thinking of Nevada, California, and definitely Florida. So when you talk about that, Tim, going independent because of all of this, what you say resonates with me specifically because I actually lived in a closed primary state as well. And I did register as an independent because the party, like you said, it no longer represents us, and really we didn't leave the party, they left us. They're not representing millennials.
Yeah, it's incredible, Mike. They've done everything but tell me to leave the party. I go to Democratic club meetings and Wassermann Schultz's aide gets 10 minutes to address the crowd. I can't even get up for a 2-minute stump speech. They barely even mention my name. They keep me away from the microphone, and their excuse afterwards is that Wassermann Schultz sent a cake to the lunch, and I didn't. I bought a table for the campaign at the lunch, but I didn't give them a cake. So it's, they make up the rules as they go along, anything to keep that man, me, away from the microphone to just introduce myself. So, they tell us to leave the party, basically, and we do, and then they claim we're dividing the party.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that, actually, because since you have basically decided to run as an independent, when I watch stories or read stories about this or watch videos about it on YouTube, there's always the common criticism, from, I want to say the center left, or actually the center, really, from neoliberal Democratic Party loyalists who will say, well, now he's just ensuring that a Republican is going to win that seat in that district. How do you respond to those people? Because I'm someone who is definitely against vote shaming, and it seems like nothing we say can satisfy them. So what do you say to critics who think that this is a bad decision?
Well, I'll say this. First of all, if you believe the count from the last election, and there's lots of reasons now to wonder since, major federal violations were made to cover up or to not have a real ballot inspection.
And it's Debbie Wassermann Schultz, too, just alone tells you enough.
And her machine, absolutely. But if you believe the official count, we got almost 44% of the vote in a closed primary when I was a candidate for less than 8 months, heading against somebody who everyone assumed was going to be in the Hillary Clinton administration right up until Election Day. So we already have a good chunk of Democratic support in this district, and the independents are not far behind Democrats in this district in registration, non-party affiliation. I intend to win this race. The people who are complaining and whining that, oh, this is going to set it up for a Republican victory, it shows they've got no confidence that Debbie Wassermann Schultz can win a three-way race. And, you know, then I hear people pointing to 2000, the year 2000, the election with Ralph Nader. Well, a lot has changed since 2000. 18 years has gone by. We are arguably in year 10 of an economic depression for most Americans. I know, you know, GNP growth is 2% or something, and the stock market's riding high. But the unemployment rate's a fiction. Most people are suffering, and they don't have good jobs. They're afraid to leave the crappy job they have, basically, if they're lucky to have one. This is year 10 of a lot of economic pain. And you take a look at this millennial generation. Again, 70% of them, and people younger than the millennials, 70% are non-party affiliation, to the point where the largest political bloc, voting bloc in this country, is now non-party affiliation. About 41% of Americans are not registered Democrat or Republican. Both Democrats and Republicans lag behind independents. That was not the case in the year 2000 with Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader was, you know, way ahead of his time, you can say. At this point, the clock has caught up. It's not as tough a road for independents to run against both established parties in a general election. I think a lot of folks are going to see a corporate-funded Democrat, a corporate-funded Republican, and a grassroots independent, and they're going to have a real choice this time.
That's really exciting to hear. And really, if anyone can win an independent congressional race, I really feel like it's you, because you're one of the first Bernie-crats, if you want to, if you will, who came out of the 2016 election. You were one of the first few people that really gave a lot of us hope that, oh, okay, it's not just Bernie now. There's other people who are coming out who are running on this platform of Medicare for all, tuition-free public colleges and universities, ending the wars. So I think that that's really important. Now, on the subject of Bernie Sanders, I wanted to ask you, because the last time you were running, I kind of irritated Bernie Sanders personally, because I made a video calling him out when he stopped campaigning for you. So in 2016, just to give everybody, you know, some context, Bernie Sanders endorsed Tim Canova, and then he suddenly kind of gave you the cold shoulder. So I called Bernie out, told him to help Tim Canova. He's running against Debbie Wassermann Schultz. Chuck Todd actually aired my criticism and gave it to Bernie, and Bernie kind of brushed it off. I want to ask you this time, Tim, what's your relationship like with Bernie? Has he endorsed you? Have you spoken with any of the Bernie people at all? Because now that you're independent, he's also independent. So I think that he could probably empathize, you know, with you and why you're doing this.
Right.
Any updates on that with Bernie?
Let me give you a little background. I was a law professor, have been a law professor for the past 2 decades, and writing an awful lot about the Federal Reserve and the need to reform the Fed quite dramatically. And I will say my views were kind of outlier progressive views until the 2008 financial collapse. And suddenly I was among those who had really been proven to have been right for a long time. And in 2011, it was right around when I was part of the Occupy Wall Street movement. I was actually out in Los Angeles teaching out in Southern California, and part of the Occupy Los Angeles encampment, teaching a workshop on the Federal Reserve. Right around that time, I got a call from Senator Sanders' office asking me to be on an advisory committee on reforming the Fed. So I got to know the senator a little bit through that kind of work, and I had already had a very great opinion of him. And when he decided to run for president, I immediately endorsed him and contributed to his campaign, like millions of others, small donations, at a time when I didn't have the foggiest inclination to run for Debbie Wassermann Schultz's seat. About 6 months later, a confluence of events led me to jump in, and a lot of it was to support Bernie Sanders' campaign. The pivotal moment was when Wassermann Schultz and her DNC tried to deny the Sanders campaign access to the Van voter database. And at that point, I made up my mind that I was jumping in. And really, I felt so inspired by by Senator Sanders, to be calling for this nonviolent, progressive political revolution and conjuring up this movement. A lot of the Occupy Wall Street and people who had been active on all kinds of progressive campaigns came to life and gravitated around Bernie, and so did I. And I never reached out and asked for his endorsement. I just didn't think it was within the realm of possibility. After all, I was running against the head of the DNC. He had his race. I had mine. He had enough political enemies. I figured we never even reached out didn't think it was within the realm of possibility. And then in May of 2016, out of the blue, Bernie surprised us and endorsed me. And I didn't see it coming whatsoever. His endorsement meant a lot. We had already raised $1 million, but we probably raised another $1 million just from his endorsement and a couple of emails that he put out on my behalf, on behalf of our campaign. So I'm forever grateful for everything he did to help highlight our campaign and boost it. When he did not campaign alongside me in South Florida, I won't pretend, of course it's disappointing, but I certainly understood the kind of pressures that Bernie must have been under, and I believe still is. I hear all the time people criticizing him that he has not done more, and you're not going to hear me criticize him for that. He has a full-time job representing the people of Vermont, and at this point, the American people. And he functions in the United States Senate, where there are a lot of carrots and sticks, and the stakes are very high. And he's fighting for us all the time. I don't expect an endorsement. I have not reached out for an endorsement. If one comes my way, I'll be as surprised as I was last time. I don't think you win campaigns on the ground by endorsements. And I'll say that the two campaigns that were really the model for me when I got in last time, and they remain the model, one was Paul Wellstone's campaign in the 1990s. Wellstone was just a political science professor at Carleton College, and he took on a very entrenched Republican, Rudy Boschwitz, and he ran a great grassroots campaign, and he won. And the other was more recent. It was Eric Cantor, the Republican whip in the House of Representatives, lost an open primary, I believe it was, to David Bratt, a college professor in Virginia. And Cantor outspent Bratt $5 million to $300,000. And, it just shows both those campaigns that if you've got a message and you're speaking the truth and you got the people on your side, the political consulting class can't stop you. Endorsements for your opponent won't prop them up. As long as we can verify the vote and make sure that every ballot is counted, I think grassroots progressives, whether they're running as Democrats or independents, are going to be surging this fall.
That's exciting. And I actually wanted to ask you about, bigger picture issues in particular, because we're at a time when we have Donald Trump as the president. We are looking at the possibility of conflict between the United States and Russia over Syria. So I just wanted to ask you and get your take on this. Where do you see the country in 10 years? Do you feel as though progressives will gain a lot more ground? Do you think that there's hope for the Democratic Party? Do you think by then maybe the party just collapses entirely and we see a new party rise up? I know this is a really broad question, but do you think that progressives ultimately will be successful, or is, the forces in Washington, D.C. just too powerful?
To be very honest with you, I think anything is possible. Anything. It could be a progressive tide that's coming sooner than we realize, or we could be heading into a dark age. I don't mean to sound melodramatic, but you take a look at what's at stake right now in this world. The distribution of wealth and income and power has probably never been more top-heavy than it is in this country at this moment. It's an unstable financial and economic system. There's a lot of disaffection here. There's the problem, existential threat here in South Florida, it certainly is, of rising sea levels and climate change.
Right.
The environment at a tipping point. You've got a global context of increasing hostilities, arms sales all over the world, what seems like a nonstop bloodshed in so many countries, proxy wars between the Saudis and the Iranians, proxy wars perhaps between the United States and Russia. I'm very disturbed by what's happening in Syria. I caution against a rush to judgment, and I think the president should not be acting militarily based on unsubstantiated allegations. there needs to be a real investigation as to the source of the latest chemical weapons attack in Syria. A year ago almost, last April, there was another attack like that in Syria, and Trump fired something like 50 plus cruise missiles into Syria without any congressional authorization. I mean, just a lawless act. And Debbie Wassermann Schultz, among others, applauded him for it. So for months, she had been calling him a madman. And then suddenly he fires cruise missiles into a country based on, again, allegations. And I'm not here to say the allegations are true or false, but we've gone to war too many times on unsubstantiated allegations. Many of them have turned out to have been lies. You can go back to the Vietnam War. I'm sure you can go back even earlier. But the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin incident led to congressional authorization and, 57,000 Americans dead, many more injured, and millions of Vietnamese killed. And then, of course, much more recently, the lies that led us into the war in Iraq. Barack Obama, when he was a candidate in 2008, said he didn't just want to end the war in Iraq. He wanted to end the mindset that got us into Iraq. And I think on that count, we have failed terribly as a nation.
Yeah.
The mindset that got us into Iraq was that it's okay to engage in wars of regime change. They don't have to comply with international law or even perhaps our own constitutional framework. And those wars of regime change are justified by politicized intelligence that are often lies that are just repeated by a corporate media. And this is a pattern that's been going on way too long.
Right.
So I'm sorry for digressing, but you ask, where will this country be in 10 years? I wonder, where is it going to be a month from now, a week from now?
Right.
These are very serious times. There's an oligarchy that's been in charge. They want to suppress dissent. They want to crush campaigns like mine. And the people aren't going away, and the people are waking up. So I do think this country is at an incredible crossroads right now, and it's a time for people to step up, to sacrifice, to redouble their commitment, and to have courage.
Absolutely. I want to ask you one last question before we end the interview, because this is something that I always struggle with personally. If I were to run for Congress, which I don't want to, but let's say hypothetically speaking, you win, you kick Debbie Wassermann Schultz out of office, and you get to Congress with so many issues that need to be addressed, with so much at stake. What do you do first? What do you think would be one of your first couple of legislative priorities?
I think the top priority for this country has got to be election integrity. There's just too much that went on in 2016 that has undermined the public's faith and confidence in the election system. In about a dozen states, a lot of eyebrows have been raised as to what happened to the Bernie Sanders campaign. Exit polls showing him winning, him losing caucuses and primaries that people just don't have faith in the results. And when you call this out, the establishment tries to kick you down for just speaking some basic truths. Last October, the New York City Board of Elections admitted in a civil consent decree that they had purged over 200,000 citizens from their voting rolls in the days before that presidential primary. And there's been no criminal investigation or prosecutions. So there's been this kind of rigging, ballot destruction, purging of voter rolls that has happened with impunity. And this has got to stop. This country will never be a democracy again if we don't have fair elections with integrity. All over Western Europe, countries have banned the electronic voting machines because they understand how easy it is for them to be hacked, whether it's by foreign powers or domestic. We need to return to not just what the Europeans do, but what was done in this country for 200 years, basically. Paper ballots counted by hand in public and reported immediately at the local precinct level. They would be transparent elections, and the votes would be verifiable. What would it require to do that? It would require the federal government probably to spend a few $1 billion on election day and election night to employ 100,000 Americans or whatever number it takes to actually do their civic duty and count these ballots so that we have trust in our elections. And the federal government is able to have $1 trillion tax cuts and $1 trillion quantitative easing programs for Wall Street banks and hundreds of billions of dollars in corporate subsidies. Certainly, it can afford to pay for an election system that restores the public's faith and confidence. I would be trying to work hard as a top priority, taking corporate money out of politics. I know I'm not the only one running on that. We need more folks who not just will run on that. I mean, even my opponent, Wassermann Schultz, talks about overturning Citizens United while she takes millions of dollars in corporate campaign contributions.
And predatory payday lenders specifically. That's hilarious to me.
Wall Street banks, payday lenders, private prison companies, fossil fuels. The list goes on and on with her. It's unbelievable. And, you know, again, I urge your viewers to go online to timcanova.com and throw a few dollars our way. It's beginning to add up. Do not underestimate people power. When the grassroots come together, we can overcome this corporate oligarchy and these corporate funded political machines. So, you know, it's a great progressive agenda. And I would urge folks to go to timcanova.com and check out our issues page. There are so many campaigns where you go to their websites and their issue page is, you know, 6 bullet points, and that's about it. And maybe
platitudes.
And maybe it's because I'm a law professor. I've been writing about a lot of these problems for years and publishing in book chapters and law journals and you name it. So there's a paper record out there. But we've got very detailed issue statements with commitments and ideas. We did everything but put footnotes in there. So I would urge folks to go to our website, help us in any way they can, and to please share on social media and spread the word. A lot of folks don't know, first, that the Broward Supervisor of Elections destroyed the ballots in our race. We've got a video, a 4-minute video up on our website that really explains it and actually has excerpts of the supervisor's own deposition. And a lot of folks don't know we're running as an independent this time. So I urge folks, please go online to our website, help us in any way you can. The time is now to stand firm and to not back down, It's important. This is a fight we can't walk away from.
Is there any need for canvassing currently in your district or phone banking for people who don't live in your district?
Yes, there is. And canvassing and phone banking were such a big part of our last campaign. So many people from all over the country were phone banking for us. We're about to have our own dialer up on our website within a few days, so folks can be phone banking for us. In addition, you know, last campaign, I'll tell you, we got a couple of dozen burners, people who had experience as field organizers and deputy field organizers in Bernie's campaign, came to our district. We actually had to rent 2 houses for these folks to live here while knocking on doors in the summer heat and humidity. And we also had a couple of hundred volunteers right from our district. It was quite a grassroots campaign. We had 4 field offices. I don't think there was probably any congressional campaign in the country where there was a bigger commitment to the ground game, to the field operations. And at the height of that campaign, we were knocking on about 10 to 12,000 doors a week and engaging voters in their front doors, you know, their living rooms, talking with them about the issues. And we were also calling about 3,000 folks every week as well. And our field numbers really showed us rocking it, which is why among the reasons we were concerned about the official count, and we thought we better at least start asking some questions, and I'm very glad we did. A lot of folks told me that I shouldn't have pursued the public records request, that I shouldn't have brought a lawsuit against the Broward Supervisor of Elections. And, you know, when you ask to see something and the authorities say, you know, they make it difficult, it should only make us more motivated to dig harder and find out what it is they're hiding. And it was only after we filed the lawsuit that these election officials actually violated federal law and destroyed the ballots. So we cannot relent. We have to be pushing on all fronts at this point.
Well, hey, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I think that your movement and your campaign, it really is inspirational to people who do feel demoralized, because you see just how much people power is going into your campaign. And really, you were one of the original Berniecrats. And now when you look at the 2018 election, there are dozens running across the country, probably more than 100. So it's really great to see people getting behind progressives and to see all this momentum. It's really inspiring. So Tim,
Mike,
thank you.
Let me just say that I hear a lot of times people say that I've inspired them to run.
That's great.
But I got to tell you, you know, it's great if you can help and people are demoralized and you're able to inspire them. But as a candidate up against a big, tough machine, it has been so easy to get demoralized in the past 2 years. I've been inspired by the grassroots. I wouldn't be doing this, I wouldn't be able to do it if the grassroots wasn't there every day helping our campaign in big ways and small ways. So I just want to say how grateful I am for the inspiration that I get and the encouragement I get from all of you.
That's great. Teamwork across the country. I like it. So Tim, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
And tell us where to reach you on Twitter real quick before we leave.
I think that is Tim_Canova. On Facebook, we're Tim Canova FL. And our website is timcanova.com.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.